Hey guys, this is Jay Calder with JAYONBOXING here, giving you a preview and prediction for Terence Crawford versus Israil Madrimov. And of course, before we get started, like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff, and definitely leave your take down in the comments below. Greatly appreciated. And a little bit of fight info here. As mentioned, we have Terence Crawford taking on Israil Madrimov. This will be at the BMO Stadium in Los Angeles, California, airing on pay-per-view in the junior middleweight division, with Madrimov's WBA and WBO junior middleweight titles on the line. So we have a great fight, in my opinion, on an even greater card. What's not to love? Well, if you've been a boxing fan, you know that your community will find something to hate on. In this case, it's the unknown element to Israil Madrimov. While a world champion, Israil is a bit of an unknown commodity. Decent fighter, it seems, decent amateur career, but still not the biggest name. However, what we do know is he's a sizable 154-pounder, the naturally bigger man in this fight, and he can crack a little bit. Against a fighter moving up, no matter how talented Terence Crawford is, that has to be worth a look or two. Still, questions about Madrimov and the fight itself naturally persist. So let's get into some of the biggest questions heading into this contest. First thing I would ask is, how much do we know about Madrimov? As mentioned, and to be frank, not much. He's had only 11 fights as a pro and has only been professionally boxing since late 2018. Not much we can know. To put that in perspective, Terence Crawford has had nearly double the amount of title fights as Madrimov has had professional fights. That said, Madrimov was a decorated amateur and seems to have a style that suits the pro games even better, so he isn't a slouch by any means. He's a bit of a banger, having knocked out 7 of the 10 opponents he's beaten, and he's adjusted well to the paid ranks as mentioned. So, while we don't know too much, what we know is Madrimov at least has a semi-decent resume for a guy with so few paid fights. I would also ask, how well does Crawford acclimate to 154? You know, Crawford was an interesting fighter at 147. In some ways, he was a modestly sized welterweight. At the same time, he had a 100% KO ratio at the weight while cleaning up the division, so he wasn't fighting bums here. Still, that was due to his skills, not some size advantage that he employed. His skills would set up the shots that the rest of his work would finish. So the question will be whether Crawford has the skills to make his shots matter 7 pounds north, at least in terms of his offense. Facing a decent puncher in Madrimov, defensively, you'll have to ask, does Crawford also have enough skill to be mindful of what's coming back, perhaps more than he had to at the lighter weights, and of course, at a more advanced age going into this contest? Crawford doesn't have a glass jaw, but he has been stunned in the past, so we'll have to see how this kind of plays itself out once the fight is underway, considering all of the components to this that I just mentioned. And I would finally ask, how right or wrong are the odds? You know, while we get into the odds a bit later in more detail, let's just say they are pretty comfortably wide in favor of Crawford. Like, too comfortable. Considering Crawford is debuting at 154 and is a couple months away from turning 37 years of age, while Madrimov is a solid, unbeaten junior middleweight that can bang in his physical prime at 29 years old, yeah, they are pretty wide. Of course, it has a lot to do with what each guy has done and against whom. That said, power doesn't care about accomplishments, and age is impatient. It's not waiting for anyone, so it does matter. While I believe Crawford should be the favorite, the odds do seem a bit odd is the word that comes to mind. So regardless, with all that said, let's get into the pick and break this fight down. Starting with Crawford here, for Crawford to win, you want to give him different looks. Madrimov is a solid fighter, but he's a fighter looking to come forward and let his hands go. He will throw in some angles here and there, but he isn't dynamically quick. So you're going to want to make him think, make him hesitate even more, to make him less dynamic and give yourself the necessary time to exploit his weaknesses. That can include switching stances as you do so well, doing it early especially until you find the stance that works best in this contest. You also have some great footwork, so turning him and forcing him to miss big as he heavily commits can allow for you to land in moments when he doesn't expect you to. You can also use feints to get him to overcommit and use your superior speed to land with authority. This can also be done with clever level switches, which again, you can do pretty well. So throw in those feints and level switches, those angles, and perhaps switch from left to right early to create those openings you can exploit as the contest progresses. I would also say make accuracy your power. While you're a solid puncher, as you move up in weight, that naturally is going to diminish some, at least. Doesn't mean it'll go away completely, but it's not going to be the same as it was at 135 to 147 pounds. That has to be kept in mind. Therefore, you will need to rely more on things like your accuracy and your hand speed to get your opponent's respect and potentially hurt them. As you create those openings, as mentioned, that accuracy can catch Madrimov, especially as you have considerable reach advantage in this fight, even though you're the one moving up. Your shot selection is usually on point. Catching Madrimov coming in with too much aggression will create that double impact, again, that you want to use in this fight. So use those fast hands and that accuracy to exploit the leaky defense of Madrimov that he can unfortunately have for him at times. Find those openings and catch him coming in to make your punches really matter. And finally, time the left hook. In terms of particular shots, one that could be a great deal of success for you is the left hook. It's a shot you can throw very well, so naturally you want to throw it, but it's also a shot Madrimov is particularly susceptible to. That can be landed well while you're in the orthodox stance, as it needs less time to travel, and you can throw it while catching Madrimov coming in. That said, you can also get it in there from the lefty stance if thrown at the right time and from the right distance. Either stance, if thrown when in position, that left can do well for you, as it's a shot Israil doesn't always seem to have a defense for. So make sure to give Madrimov different looks and angles, focus on speed and accuracy to hurt your guy, and work that left hook in from either side, and you should find some success in this fight. Now switching over to Madrimov, for the champion, when you want to keep your work shorter. You're a bit slower footed. Now, granted, you have solid foot movement, but it's not always done that quickly. A way to make it more effective is by taking smaller steps as you move around the ring and get into your positions. You still want to use your angles, as you can get into a good rhythm once you get that going, but you don't want to take too many chances lunging in against a skilled operator like Crawford. You have at times even jumped into your left hooks, and that's a no-no against someone as skilled as the American. Also, in terms of your shot selection, as I was kind of alluding to there, I would argue you want to keep your work short as well, especially early. You don't want to hook all your work, especially as the slower-handed fighter with less reach. It leaves you open against the sharpshooter. Instead, use the crosses and the straight shots down the middle a bit more. So take quicker steps and get those shots going in more of a straight line to make up for some of the speed deficiencies you might have in this contest. I would also say don't just rush in. You have some very solid technical components to your game. However, one area where you can be caught out is that you rush in with your work. On the one hand, it makes sense, especially against Crawford. With the shorter reach, you need to find a way inside to get to work. That can be done by doubling up the jab and moving off the straight line. The double jab moves him back, maybe more in a bit of a straight line, and using those angles to give you better chances of avoiding his work, of course, will help you break some of that range down. What you don't want to do is just start lunging in and looking to land anything. Your movement has to have a purpose. Don't overcommit and give Bud the chances of landing something fight-changing. Get inside using a more tactical approach and then unload your heavy shots. So be mindful of how you close the gap, then get to work, and not the other way around. And finally, land the explosive right hand. You're a fighter that likes to stay busy, and with someone that wants to control the fight and the ways in which it flows as Bud does, activity is a good idea to counter that. However, trying to get the single right hand going isn't a way of avoiding that high work rate, but rather a way of getting it going. You want to use the jab, those angles, that footwork to get in range as mentioned, and when there, you want to unload a shot that has the best chance of hurting Bud, or at least disrupting what he's trying to do. To me, that would be the short right hand you like to throw. It doesn't need wind-up, you throw it heavy and can still land with authority. It's probably your most explosive overall shot. That can then push Crawford back a bit more and allow for you to get the rest of your combination work going with Crawford in perhaps a more prone position. So keep your work tight and short, make sure you're not rushing in against Crawford's work, and get that straight right hand going to give yourself a shot of pulling off this upset. And in terms of my pick here, well, I think Madrimov has a bit more of a chance than the odds say, which we will get into just a bit here. I'm rolling with the favorite in Crawford. It might take Crawford a round or two to adjust, to get a read, but then I think he begins picking apart the slower Madrimov from the outside. Madrimov will lunge in, get caught out, and be made to pay by the sharper, faster Crawford more often than not. I could even see Crawford scoring a knockdown in this fight. I see Terence actually kind of bullying him at moments. However, I do believe that Terence likely takes a comfortable decision down the stretch as Madrimov closes up and runs out of ideas. Winner, Terence Crawford via unanimous decision. And in terms of the betting odds, as mentioned, Crawford is a sizable favorite, coming in at a minus 700 with Madrimov at a plus 480. We also have an over-under of 9.5 with the over at a minus 150 and the under at a plus 115. Some decent odds here, though obviously not Crawford straight up. Avoid that option. However, as I've hinted at, I think there is some real value in a Madrimov bet. You're getting about 5-1 odds with an undefeated, primed, bigger fighter that can pop. That's worth a small value bet, in my opinion, for me. Doesn't mean I see it happening, but the value is there enough that it doesn't feel like a terrible idea. Also, in terms of the over-under, the line at 9.5 is solid too. If you do fancy the upset, I think the under is attractive. For me, I'm thinking the over is a reasonable call here as well. But in any event, those are your odds. And my prediction record as of this recording is 36-15 with 17 exact. But let me know your thoughts, your bets, your picks, all that good stuff down in the comments section below. And be sure to check out the social media above. You can also check out JAYONBOXING.com. And of course, you can check out the next video by clicking here. Until next time.